Aspetta, spengo qua. Chiudo la videochiamata.
Okay, we're on. We're live now. We should be live. Can you see it? All right. Here's the hand. Okay. Few more minutes and then we can get started, right? Okay, guys. Seems like you are all getting here, right? What time is it? Okay. I think we can get started, right? Okay, so thank you for joining me. Today I would like to talk about this structural drawing, how to achieve a sense of volume and three-dimensionality with lines instead of values, right? The values will be the tonal rendering without lines will be the subject of another live. So I'm opening with this beautiful drawing. Right? This is GREuze, and GREuze was 17th century, and this image shows beautifully how he was using these framing lines, or what I call structural lines, to define the volume, right? The volume of in this case, the face. This is quite a tricky technique, and today I would like to go over the mechanics of it, how to draw with these structural lines. This is one of my favorite method, and it is connected. It's probably originated during the Renaissance, and I'm gonna show you some examples later of other drawings, right? But we can see how GREuze here mixed a tonal, a flat value. See that? And so the flat value here under there's a flat value there, and then he went over it with these framing lines or structural lines that kind of follow the profile, right, of the volumes of the face, and describe the peaks and the valleys of the subject, right? So let's see another example. This is another example, more modern. This is Waterhouse, and he is also using some sort of structural line, but very, very subtle, more modern way of using the structural line. In fact, as in GREuze, these lines are very, very visible. See that? In in Waterhouse, they're just barely hinted, and he uses them more interrupted, just barely subtly visible. Let's see if I can enlarge this, right? See those lines there? Look how beautiful they are. See that? See, they can follow the neck. See that? Follow the neck. See that here? Let me show you here, right? Here, right? They follow the section of the neck, right? They follow the reliefs of the form, but they're much more subtle, and they become tonal. They become tonal. Whereas the lines in the GREuze, the structure of framing lines in the GREuze, are not tonal. They're just structural, right? So let's see now another example. This is a more modern example. This is Cadmus, Paul Cadmus. And you see this exactly the same thing. Paul Cadmus was a master in using this technique. And in this case, I think he used a white gouache over tone paper and a brown pencil. And you see how he also follows the relief of the form, almost like a topographic map, right? Where you see the section of the neck, or a CAT scan, right? This is another example of Cadmus. Look how beautiful this is, right? Look how beautifully these volumes are rendered, right? Following really the section, right? They give you a constant description of the percourse, of the curves of the forms of the body. Beautiful. This is another example, right? And I have this image here, right, that I think explain probably how this technique originated. This is I found this image a few years ago in an old art history book, and I couldn't find the author of this picture. Just beautiful. You see how this is an unfinished work by Michelangelo, and you can see the mark of the rough chisel. Right, the rough chisel is a chisel with four tips, and he would go over the form like this, right? Sculpting it like this, sculpting like this, right? And those lines are comparable, see that, to the structural lines that we see here in this drawing here like this, see that? So Michelangelo was following the form with the chisel, describing them, and then we can see quite a few Michelangelo drawings that have that webbing, right? We see the same technique also in Raphael. We don't see it in Leonardo. Leonardo had his own mark making, but this is clearly purely essentially the structural way of defining the form, right? So I also brought a few examples that are not structural. This is Proudhon, right? Proudhon is later on, it was using eminently tonal rendering of the form. You see how in this case in here, we really don't have lines that follow the form, but we have lines that are vertical like this, right? And they're going to be more or less intense with the intent of creating a tonal range, right? Darker or lighter, right? This image probably explains it a little bit more clearly. See that only vertical, not only vertical, but mostly like this, right? Like this. And then eventually we have some lines that are not completely vertical, but overall we have this vertical pattern and the layering of lines to create an extended tonal range. This is another example of GREuze, beautiful. Proudhon, right? Beautiful work, really beautiful work. And this is just a detail, right? Proudhon, GREuze, Raphael, they are all artists that you might want to copy, right? This instead is, I think it's a drawing by, a study by Pontormo, I'm thinking. And this is a Mannerist. We have still a very strong influence of the structural drawing of the Renaissance, with some smudging, see that, for the tonal in certain areas. So we have a collaboration here between line and an area of value, right? When we get to the gas, this is purely tonal. Look how beautiful this or girl is, right? Probably charcoal on shellac paper. You see many artists today using this technique, and it's quite a beautiful technique. But again, this is purely tonal and not the subject of today. This is also Degas, right? Degas. And so what I would like to do, after having introduced the structural line, right, I want to introduce quickly with the, by showing you a drawing from my first book, some basic concept of the light on form. And I might have already discussed these, but we want to go over these quickly, and then I'm going to also do some demos for you, right? So light on form, right? So light, we're gonna have a when we look at a subject, we want to and we need to start working on it tonally, right? We want to understand where is the light coming from, right? So in this case, the light is coming from this direction, like this, right? So in this case, in here, we can clearly easily imagine how the light comes from here. That's going to be the light mesh, that's going to be the shadow mesh, and that's the core shadow, or the point of passage between the light and the shadow. On a cylinder, the core shadow will be even, narrow, even width, right? On a tapering cone, see the cone, right? The core shadow is going to be tapering, right? Because it will reflect the curvature of the section that we have here, which is going to be different, right? In along the length of the core shadow. When we then look at forms such as imagine this could be a nose, right? This could be a nose, right? This is a corner. This could be the section of a bicep. This could be a thigh, right? As this angle here, the curve, right, of the section of this object becomes sharper and sharper, or wider and wider, and flatter, the width of the core shadow will change, right? In this case, we're going to have an abrupt passage from one plane to the next. So here, this line here, which is equivalent to this and to this, will be very narrow and quick, right? This, with a slightly more increased arc here, we're going to have a, narrow line, but this will start seeing more clearly some tonal development. As this radius increases, we're going to see this core shadow getting wider and wider, and to the point where, like in this case, when you have a very shallow arc here, this core shadow is going to be difficult to identify in the sense of where does it start, where does it end, but it's very clearly visible here, identifiable here. As we move to a very wide area with a gently curving surface, then we don't really know exactly with precision where it starts, where it goes, but it definitely will be wider and wider. So I want to show you now, in terms of, this is from the second book, right? The use of the line, right? A little bit of theory, also, so we wait a little bit for everybody to show up. A little bit of theory, and then we get into the practice, right? So here, this is it. In this image, this is from the second book, right? I show the differences between a cross contour, the cross contour hatching, and what I call tonal cross contour hatching, right? So the cross contour, imagine a cylinder or a strange form like this, and imagine section, right? Cutting it like this, right? Cutting like this. And these sections, right, like you're cutting a salami, right, will reveal the curve of the volume of this object. As this object gets narrower and narrower, this curve will get sharper and sharper, and then as the profile of this object becomes squarish, right, we're going to have also a change of this this line of section, right? If I want to use the same concept, this is just a theory, right? When I apply this to the practice of drawing, I'm going to use the same concept, but I can be a little bit more relaxed, right? I'm going to show you later as we do it. Maybe we do it together if you want. And I can add, I can, instead of making a full line from here to here, I can maybe stop here, leave that white for the highlight, and then start here again, right? The important thing is that I have a continuity between this line and this line here. I don't want to have line going this way and this way, right? Continuity that is given by the section. If I want to reinforce some a little bit of the sense of volume, right, I could add a little bit more of hatching like this, right, on the side, and here for the core shadow, for example, without necessarily worrying about the tonal range, right? But when I do this extra lining here, I can also go a little bit at an angle like this, not necessarily always perpendicular to the form, right? So this is drawing across the form. This is also across the form, but not perpendicular, a little bit at an angle like this, right? Like that. If I want instead to really use this technique for also tonal rendering, right? Then you see how I can increase the amount of hatching that I do, right? So that in certain spots, the line will become so dense to create a dark value, as dark as my color, my drawing implement will permit me, and therefore I obtain a tonal cross contour hatching, right? So let's see an example of a few drawing. This is a drawing from my second book, right? And you can see how here, right? See these lines in here, right? These are the structural lines. They go down like this to block in the plane. This is very geometric, so it's easy, right? As we get here, see that we increase the volume. So now the line, we're going to do this, right? This, and curve, right? This, right? So a bit like a gradually adding more and more planes, right? And you see how now the direction of this line follow the direction of the plane. When we get to the hands here, see the same concept, right? Hopefully you can see the lines, right? But you're gonna see all these lines that are now organized like this, right? Like this, like this. But they're not gonna be so rigid. They're gonna be a little bit more flowing, right? And for this, I'm gonna show you the finished hand. This is like a series of hands that I did for my first book, where I show the direction of the hatching, right? Let's see if you can see it here, right? See that? Actually, there's another hand that is more visible. Here, see that? We see this line going across like this, with a chip, right? See that, like this, right? And here, see that? We have this following of the surface, like this, right? So you really have to imagine, see that? You have to imagine what would that relieve? How is that relieved? What if I cut this and I, imagine the line of section like this? But the line of section in this case can be perpendicular, but it can also be slightly at an angle, or in the case of something that is round, volumetric like this, it could be going different direction, right? Different direction. So let's play with this a little bit, right? With a pencil and see what happens, right? So imagine now I'm blocking in right. Okay, like this, right? Like this. I'm blocking in now lines like this, right? I want to create a sense of curving of just a form. So imagine the line comes from above here, So this part in here is going to be, I'll leave it white, right? I'll leave it white. And then here, now I have a change of angle like this. So I'm gonna put some value here. But here now I'm gonna have a little bit more value, right? See that? As the light hits the form right here, perpendicularly, here, like this area here will be the lightest, that's the highlight. As the light becomes more and more at an angle compared to the direction of the plane, then we're gonna have less and less light hitting the form, and therefore a tonal development. See that here, like this, here. It's going to be even darker, right? And then I can also start now cross-hatching like this, right? So it's not cross perpendicular, it's going to be slightly at an angle like this. Down here, we have this going down like this, right? That's going to be very dark, right? So here now we can imagine maybe there's a series of planes like this, right? Coming out like this, right? Like this, right? And down like that, right here. Like that, right? So now here I could imagine the light goes here like this, so it's going to be light, and this is going to be maybe a little bit less light like this, right? This a little bit darker, right? This a little bit darker, so I can either go over it with thicker line of crosshatch. This even a little bit lighter, right? And this is going to be the darkest, right? So now I have this sort of ring, right, like this, where and when I get to a point where this should be very dark, I could also really go at a certain point even perpendicular, because at that point it doesn't really matter. I have already established the language, right, which way my lines are used, right? So this is an example of how you could practice, right, to use the line, right? Another way, think of this, right? Think that we have maybe sort of curving line like this, right? And we draw this section here like this, right, like that, right? Now the light comes from here, so you can imagine, right, this portion here is going to be light, but this portion here is going to be dark here, right? And here I have a little bit of a change of value like this, right? This is going to be light, and then we have the curve here, right? Like this. And here maybe I have a core shadow, right? And this goes up straight, that's going to be light, right? A ribbon, imagine a ribbon, right? It's going to be light, and it's going to be again curved like this, right? And I can also block here the core shadow, right? Like this, right? These are all possible exercises that you might want to perform to see if you can get this this concept of the structural lines, right? So so either you do these parallel lines, right, like this, right, or a curved line. This is a little bit more, it's a little bit closer to this. See that this is an exercise, it's a copy I did. See that these are going to be a little bit more curved because they are following organic line. Here, because they notice tend to be a little more angular, GREuze used a little bit more straight lines like that, right? But either way, it's going to be a good exercise to do, right? And really understand how this technique works, right? Think also, imagine that you are on a little bicycle, right? When you see somebody drawing like this, right? The face like this, right? You're on a little bicycle, and they are riding with the bicycle over here like this. And that's going to be your percourse, right? An anti-gravity bicycle. And so here, up, down like this, right? down like this, down like that. So here you could interrupt the mark. Instead of having a continuous mark, you could do this, right? Here, 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 see that? Like this, right? And you could also take a piece of tracing paper, put it over here, and then practice, or a photocopy, right? Take a photocopy of one of your drawings, and then you go over this, right? Like this, for example, right? See that? And you create this turning, this curve like that, right? So, there are a couple of examples, and then I want to show you how to draw on a drawing that you already kind of half done, right? So we can go down to the point, right? See this here, right? And this curve like that. So imagine now this, right? See that? Imagine the section like this. Once you have the section of this, you can see it's going to be various according to the height, right? So this portion here maybe is going down like this, right? And disappears behind that, like this, right? This is going to be gently down like this, right? And from here, I could draw this line like this, right? Or like this, either way, but also like this is acceptable, see that? If I want to really get a dark value, I will increase now the lines, right? So this would be this approach of a structural drawing. It takes a while. It takes a while to practice. So don't get frustrated too soon when you try this method, because yeah, it demands some practice, right? So let's see now. I have just posted a few videos on my, let me write it down, right? On my Patreon, in case you might want to sign up on my Patreon. My Patreon is Roberto Osti. Drawing. And you can find a lot of example on these works and more, right? So www.patreon.com/Roberto Osti Drawing. All right, so let's take now this, right? Let's take this drawing here that I started doing a few days ago, and see how we can develop this with lines, right? As you can see, this is another thing that we can do with these with this technique. Right? We can create a base of soft values blocked in, let's say like this. Let me show you. To keep the pencil long, pointy, and flat, and then block in the main area of values like this, like a tonal drawing like this, right? But without really pushing it as much as you would if you had to obtain the whole, you have to resolve the whole drawing in tonal rendering like this, right? Like this. Then you push this here, right? Careful when you use the blending stamp, because you can smudge your drawing. It's easy to lose control. And you push it down like this, right? And imagine this is now coming in. There's a passive between here and here, because this goes in, and that's going to be darker, and it's going to be lighter as it comes out like that. So I'm going to push this a little bit, right? This, right? And now here I have this portion here going to be darker, like this, because this moves that way, right? So I always think the pelvis develops like this, right? So the light comes from here, that's going to be the light, that's going to be dark, and it's going to be darker. So all this area here I can push it darker to begin with, right? And then push it in, and that will help me to have a good understanding of the turning of the form. So when I start drawing on it with the line, the structural line, I already have an idea how my lines, which direction my lines will go, right? So this is going to be darker. Let's see here, right? I'm going to push it darker, and then this is going to be now the dimples, right, or the pelvis. That's the iliac crest, like this. So I'm going to mark the iliac crest a little bit more visible, and that's the iliac spine, right? That's the bump of the iliac spine. So now this is going to be iliac crest. This is the external oblique, right? Okay, now, see, I have a few lines already done, right? So let's see if I can enlarge this a little bit. So now, let's see here, right? I'm gonna go here, sharpen point. So I see how this part in here, actually need to darken a little bit more, is a series of bumps, right? But I need to be careful with those bumps. I want them to be really turning gradually the way they are, right? So actually here, right? Actually, let's start with this, which is probably a little bit easier, right? So this is going to come down like this, right? Okay, I'm going to do this right here, like this, see that? This, right? And then I can also go slightly across with this, right? Like this, a little bit, like that, right? And here, somehow, the form is very visible here. We'll kind of get softer. So I go down like this, a little bit fewer and lighter lines, right? And then when I get here, this line we have to connect with this bump in here, which I'm going to attack from this side here, see that? So it will take a little practice to do the lines the way you want them to be, right? Which they need to be spaced evenly, and also you need to control the width or the intensity, right, of the line, like that, right, like this. So now from here, I'm going to have this portion here a little bit deeper, like that, right? So you want to, this is an important concept, right? You want to draw across the form, right? I'm going to draw across the form. What's that supposed to mean? Just take a little detour again. Then I'll show you across the form means that, so if this is your form, right? This is your form like this, right? This is now the cylinder, right? I think I already showed this in a previous slide, but let's just do it again, right? So across the form, this is the form, right? Like this, right? Direction of the form. And drawing across the form means this, means what I was showing before. I'm gonna draw sections, right? Section of this, right? And I was saying before, you can stop here and then restart here like this. So now my eye kind of fills in the gap and see that this is really a section like that. But when I do this, right? Is this still across the form? Well, yes, it is. It's still across the form, right? It's not perpendicular, but it's still across the form. What I don't want to do, and then here I can block in some more here, like this, right? See that? What I don't want to do with this technique, I don't want to draw with the form, right? This is drawing with the form, right? See that? I still can obtain a sense of turning of the curve, of the form, right? This, right? But what's the difference? The difference is while this is continuous, right? It gives me the whole turning, right? Millimeter by millimeter, inch by inch, right? This one instead has spaces in between. So when I keep doing this, right? As I keep adding values here like this, right? This line here will become more and more parallel to the form. right? This. So then you're thinking, okay, that's not going to be across the form anymore when it's here, right? But no, it is. Look at this, right? If I have now a, instead of a cylinder, I'm going to draw a polygon, right? And I apologize to those of you that have already seen this, right? But it's an important concept, right, too. So I want to go over this again, right? So now I have this, right? This, 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 and this, right? So this is going to be, see that, across the form, right? Perpendicular. But this is not, and this is almost parallel, sorry, parallel, but it is really not. This is the same as this, but from a different angle. So that's a big difference between across the form or with the form, right? And as I do this, see, I still keep telling you, okay, that's a plane, that's a plane, that's a plane. But if I do this, it's just the only parallel line that don't tell me the whole story. Also, this start looking something like pasta, right? Or something, imagine a rigatoni here, right? Pasta or penne. It's not really giving me a lot of information, right? So let's go back to this, right? So now, very important it is to keep the point very sharp, right? Okay, so now here we have lines like this, right? This needs to be darker, so I'm gonna push it like this. Gonna be here, right? Coming down like this, right? See that? Now here, right? Here we have this form turning like this, right? And here's going to be very dark. So I'm going to add another layer of dark line because this needs to go down, right? Down and the spine. So it's going to be a relatively dark area like this, right? Turn. So that I can feel this turning of the form more and more, right? Here. Right here. This now, it goes, this volume goes like this. So I could, you know, how sometime when you get to this specific volume of the body, they are not really this regular cylinders and whatnot. So the way you resolve them is going to be your possible way. There are going to be many different possible ways of resolving this problem, right? So here, right? And here, and now here, I'm going to get this right here. See that? This right here, now I'm going to have this line here, and in this case, it's going to be start very subtle, right? And then end up a little bit darker, like that. See that? So I have these forms turning. I'm going to show you also how eventually you can be a little bit more relaxed about these markings here once you understand how they work. This is done with that technique, see that? And in this case, here, this line here, right? See that? Lines like that, right? And here they kind of follow here, like this, see that? See the neck here, right? It's the same technique, but a little bit more relaxed, more loose, right? For example, here's another one, right? I'm not finished, but see all those lines there, see that, right? I need to finish it, but the same thing. In this case here, I also added black. This is the Trackerian technique, right? Trackerian technique. So to this, you could add this point, black lines. Let's see how that works with the black line, right? You see them, you see this line here, right? it's very important that you leave them, you make it very light and uniform, right? Very light and uniform, right? Let me see now, we can get this like this, right? And that. So, please let me know if you have any question about this, right? And I can maybe any specific question about this technique, so I can maybe show you, answer your question by demonstrating, right? So there's one question here, right? Oh no, this was just a request to join, right? We can see they're live. Okay, so all right, so okay, let's see. Now we need to block in this a little bit, so I'm going to smooth this. So I'm going to be careful when you smooth, when you kind of use the blending tool. You can use the fingers, but be careful using the fingers, because they might, if you have some hand lotions or the oils, just the oils of the hand might put some grease and some oil on the drawing, and you might end up damaging the drawing or preventing the medium, the pencil, from sticking to the paper, right? I'm gonna start gradually making this part in here darker and darker, right? So another thing that you could do with this technique, right? So it's the deltoid, see that? Come down like that, right? This is darker, so I'm going to increase the layers of line, right? And this, so now here it's going to be flatter, right? There's a, gotta touch it up. And later I'm going to use black here, right? Use black or dark brown, but see that it turns like this, right? So normally I would use more delicate line, but I want you to see them, right? Now he's going to be disappearing, right? So it's going to be dark like that here, right? And dark here like this, right? And this moves, if I darken this, I push it back, right? This now is going to be all darker. So in this case in here, if I want to darken all this area here, I could use what I showed you, right? The stump, the blending stump, and soften up that. But I could also use parallel lines like this. See the parallel lines, as long as the lines are parallel, right? Like this. I will not lose the detail. Need to have precise parallel line. Now here I have maybe a bump, another bump in here, making this darker, right? Because it turns, I imagine it turns, so as it moves away from you, the light comes from here, so we need to darken what's under here. The olecranon, right, the elbow, here and here, right? If I realize that maybe some areas are too dark, then I'm going to erase, but the way you erase is the same way you draw. So when you erase, in this case it took some needed eraser, see that, right? Needed eraser, and then let me see here. Here, I think I'm accepting. All right. So needed eraser and lift as I was the same method I'm drawing. So little by little, using lines. I don't want to take off a lot of value all of a sudden. I'm going to draw with my eraser, taking off a little bit of value until I'm satisfied with it. Right? And if it's too much, I go back. So I go back and forth with a graphite or charcoal, or in this case color pencil, till you achieve the right tonal range, right? Now this needs to be darker here, so I'm going to darken the whole area right here with parallel lines. And here I need to push the whole area down, right? So I don't want to be weaving a million lines in there, because you get too busy, right? Too busy. And this way I darken it, and then I can go back over it with lines, like a more dark line like this, and I recover that structural essence of the drawing, the language I'm using for this drawing, right, in terms of marks and lines. So it's going to be now dark here like this, right, because this turns, right, that. So clearly, if you know the anatomy, right, it really helps to follow this form, because you can see all the way the structure more clearly. But even if you don't know the anatomy, it's fine. You just practice, and you see the volume. You don't know what they are called, you know what muscle that is, but you're going to start seeing the volume. So start to think in terms of volume. Look at the volume. Don't draw the outline, but try to draw the percourse of your section, right, over the figure, over the form. So here I'm going to have some overlapping right here. So you're going to be overlapping of this with the recto spine, and it goes overlaps here with this form here, which is going to go behind like that. So now I have this overlapping. Now this overlapping is really important, because it creates a sense of three-dimensionality. So sharpen the pencil again. So when you shave off wood on your pencil, and you make a long point, you save a lot of money in pencil, because you just touch it up a little bit, you restore the point without having to take off a lot of material, right? Wood and lead and whatnot. And it's easier to keep it sharper. So here, see that here and here. This, right? This. See how these lines now really start creating a dialogue, right, with each other, right? You go that way, I go that way, and they surround the volume, right? Surround the hill here, and then take it. Sorry, a little bit militaristic, but here, right? Now it's going to be darker. So now, another way, so this is now another volume. So let's start seeing volumes here. So there's a volume here, right here. Volume and volume, right? So these two are the tendon of the rectus spinae. So let's see how we can visualize those, right? So this goes from here. This is the tendon, right? This is these two are the same, and this is this part here, right? Except this is wider, right? And this is compressed, right? 1 and 1, 2 and 2, right? And then of course disappears behind. So always look, like in the case of the body, okay, this forming here, right, is this. So this moves that way, this is going to move that way. See that here, following that. This goes here, and this goes here, see that? and this is back there, and this is going to be back there. So try to create a connection between these specular parts, right? This, right? You might have missed some, but here, let me enlarge it here. Use it here like this. So here, right? Now here, I'm gonna have the glutei turning, right? Turning this way, right? Turning this way like this, and turning this way like this. So let me lock in first. It's gonna be a sacrum, this gluteus, right? So one gluteus going this way, right? One gluteus going this way, right? Like that. And this is the glutei here, divided here like this, right? And down. This is the other gluteus that goes behind that, right? So let's see now. This is dark because it's back. So what I can do this, right? As I was saying before, blocking with now parallel, quick parallel lines, right? Try to stay, don't go past that line, don't go past that line. Try to stay here like this, right? This maybe you're going to go down a little bit darker. We need to push it back. As I go down, this curves, so I'm going to create now slightly curved line, darker line like this, right? So I'm gonna start hinting at that, see that? So here now I have this portion moves back. This portion out here, right? So I want to anticipate something, guys. Starting in on December 1st, I'm going to do a draw-a-thon, like a drawing marathon. Draw one drawing a day, right? One drawing a day. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna post a drawing a day, and then this is for the people that subscribe to my Patreon, right? And then you do the drawing. When you're done, you post it. You post it on Patreon, and I'll give you my comment on that, right? So it's gonna last 10 days, right? A drawing a day. So that's one drawing a day is something that maybe you want to get used to do, right? Because it will really the more you draw, the better you get. That's the way it is, right? That's the secret of the old master, right? So December 1st, I'm going to, for 10 days, then we have the holidays, so we take a break, but let's start doing that so you can practice and put to work maybe the notion that maybe you see during these live sessions, right? See how now I see the curve like this, right? That in, up, down, out, down. And then I want to push this a little bit more to make it even more evident, clear, right? That this is really a compressed plane. Remember this, right? Remember this, right? This thing here, right? And then this thing in here. That's what's happening here now, right? That's what's happening here, right? So we have this sharp turn, and the line are going to be on almost parallel, but not quite. In any case, if I look at this line from here, they're not going to be parallel. They're going to still go across the form, right? So this is now the thigh. This part in here now gets a little bit darker right here. See how many lines I can block in like this, right? Different direction. Try to avoid perpendicular lines, right? Because they create a webbing that is unpleasant, is too rigid. And now here, maybe I'm going to get some core shadow, right? Core shadow, as I discussed early on, core shadow here is going to be, this is a round form, quite big round form. So the core shadow here is going to be relatively wide, right? See here? As I draw this, making this darker, I see that I could make this darker. See that? I keep working on back and forth, right, with these, right? Here, right? So this is cross contour hatching because as you can see, tonal cross contour hatching because as you can see, I can achieve also a good sense of value, right? So maybe this is a little bit darker here, right? This definitely needs to be darker, right here. This probably I need to kind of create a little bit of a transition. And maybe this highlight is too strong, so I'm going to subdue it a little bit, right here. A little bit, right? So be careful when you do this. I'm trying to keep my hand off the drawing because if I have my hand on the drawing, I smudge it and I lose all the sharpness of the little lines like this, right? Now this now I'm going to go this darker, starting from here because this is lighter, right? Light, see that, and dark, right? See that change is the plane changes direction. I'm gonna have a change of value, change of light. See that, right? It's kind of, after a while, it's kind of fun technique when you understand how it works. It's fun, but it can be very frustrating when you don't know exactly, right, which way you should go, right? You really see how the form gets sculpted in a sense with lines, right? This, right, that. So again, let me know if you have any comments, right, any question you might want to ask, and I'll be happy to kind of discuss those, right? Right, so we could push this darker, push this darker. So now we go. Now I was thinking, okay, it's all good, it's all nice, but it's a little bit too light overall. So you do this now, and it takes a little bit of kind of courage to do it, right? But it's really not, you really don't risk to ruining anything, right? You have all those lines, right? And you're thinking, okay, the lines are nice, and I know I should make it darker, but I'm afraid I'm going to ruin it. No, you gotta try. You gotta try, right? So let's try. See what happens. What we do now. All of this has to be darker, right? So I do this now. Push it darker, right? Maybe you go slightly to a different direction like this, right? And you see we don't lose anything, right? But this gets gradually darker, right? Of course, I want to be careful. Don't go in area that need to be lighter, right? This needs to stay light, right? Go over here, but this needs to parallel thin lines, right? And then we push this darker. We increase the sense of depth or turn of the form. Now this needs to be now picked up again, right? This needs to be pushed a little bit more, right? So now it will be the this need to get this also darker here like this, right? This model is an athlete, is a very good model, and this Andrea Morani is a very good model, and he's dedicated, really dedicated to his profession. He's a photographer and he models beautiful poses, right? And he's really a favorite of mine and many other artists for these figure drawing and anatomy, right? Because all the muscles are so incredibly visible. So now what we can do, let's say now we are done with the red, right? We're not really done, but we want to maybe cool down some areas. So we get the black pencil, right? Because the red, black, and white technique, right? Red, black, and white technique, how does it work, right? So red, black, and white technique is a technique where you add, like here, see that? Black and white to increase the sense of volume in the highlight and push back the shadows, right? So let's see what can we do it. Maybe here, right? Maybe here. So here we're going to have all this area here needs to be pushed darker. So all this spine here. So I'm gonna use. Be careful, right? Don't exaggerate. A little bit at a time, right? Don't push it too dark. And with this technique, to better learn this technique, you don't want to mix the white with the red or the black. You do mix the red and the black, but you don't mix the white with the red or the black, right? So use the white only for the areas lighter than the paper, and use the black on the red, over the red, for the areas in the shadow mass, right? Why is that? Because in the shadow mass, there's going to be darker value, but mostly, or also, less chromatic color. So the black will reduce the chroma. This probably is going to be all dark like this, so I'm going to push this dark like that, right? So here now, see that all this part in here now is going to get deeper and deeper and deeper, right? Here, right? And you see how this form really get now digging deep in the back, right? Also here, maybe. So the track rayon technique is about chroma value and temperature, right? I just introduce it briefly, just to see what's the next step, what could be the next step for this technique, right? We don't have to. We could resolve all the drawing in red like I did with this, right? Only red, but this is another possibility, right? That gets darker here, right? This I can make it all dark, a little bit less chromatic. So now here I'm gonna have red and black, right? This is going to be now also red and black, but this part in here, I go over a little bit more with more black, so that's why I have the core shadow. Now, most likely, this part in here will also get the core shadow like this, right? This, right? And this portion here is darker, right? Because it turns, right? See that? So we keep pushing, right? We keep pushing. And now we start having a little bit more of interesting chromatic in tonal variation where the black pushes back the areas in the shadow mass more convincingly, right? Okay. So, all right. So if you guys don't have any questions, I'm going to see you in a month, right? And let me know if you want to let me some comments, right, on Insta. And I'm gonna think for something else for next month, related always to mark makings and how to use the tools, the drawing tools in different techniques, right? All right, guys. Thank you for showing up in droves. Bye bye.